Kris Gethin is here in the house, and welcome to another episode of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. Today is going to be a doozy. We have an awesome person on the end of the line, and his name is Josh Perry. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Kris. I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate it too. Now, Josh, you have quite the story here, but let's start from the beginning. You actually grew up in Cape Cod, from my understanding, and you came over to where you are now in North Carolina in about 2007, was that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
around that. You were like 17 years old. And you were obviously, you're a professional BMXer today, traveling around the world, being paid, for what you love. But from what age were you actually BMXing back in Cape Cod?
I got my first BMX bike just after I turned 14. My birthday is in November, so right before Christmas, and that's where it started.
Wow, so you actually rose to the professional ranks rather quick, I should imagine then, compared to other guys.
Yeah, it's actually crazy to think about it. Yeah, actually about 3 years.
Damn, that is insane. I never, I follow extreme sports quite a lot. I used to race motocross for about 13, 14 years. So that is a rarity. So were you always kind of fearless? Of course you have to be very technical, direct, but you obviously have to have a little bit of craziness in you at the same time. I know anybody in showbiz, like in the musical industry or actors or extreme sports, definitely have to have some craziness in them to exceed.
Yeah, and for sure, we call it calculated insanity or things like that. But ever since I was little, my mom's always told the story of me going down the driveway with a tricycle, at the end of it jumping off and yelling bail, and just always been jumping off counters, telling her to catch me midair and things like that. So I just got bored of school sports, and then I got into skateboarding when I was about 11 or 12, and then saw that bikes could ride ramps, and I thought that was cooler, and just had at it.
Did you used to suffer a lot of injuries? When you'd be wiping out, were you breaking wrists, fingers, anything like that? And did any of that deter you?
Yeah, so there was minor injuries, scrapes and bumps and falling down, rolled ankles, things like that. My first major injury was I hyperextended my left elbow when I was about 15, and so it went the other way, and I was out for a month and a half, I think. But I think what's interesting about BMX, and one of the things I like to share about and bring light to, is the fact that in order to learn a trick, you have to fail and fail over again. But BMX conditioning, actually sports and just sports in general, like anything, if you look at it the correct way, or not correct way, but the right perspective, you learn as you go. And so you start developing this mental fortitude to not look at it as failure, but with a trick, you want to get to the next level. So it's what does it take? I just fell down. What do I do next time not to fall? And so you don't see it as failure, you see it as learning opportunities. And I think every injury, it's always been, how long till I can get back on the bike? I want to land that trick, or I want to do it again. I want to go to that contest. So it's set me up for other areas of my life to just keep trucking away and just working my butt off.
Yeah. I guess that's what separates a lot of professionals from amateurs as well, is having that mindset. Okay, I am prepared to make sacrifices. I am prepared to hurt myself in order to succeed. And I think a lot of people just look at the success and think, yeah, I want that, but they don't calculate all the sacrifices, whether they hurt or not, in order to get there.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I've been, like I say all the time, I failed more to learn one trick than most people are willing to in a lifetime. And I've been in more pain than I think a lot of people are willing to go through just to do something they love, whether you get paid for it or not. But that's the thing about passion. It's you're not, until I can't walk, I'm going to try and ride my bike again. So it's just, it's an interesting thing to take over to other areas.
So you've how old are you now, Josh?
I actually just turned 30 in November.
30. Okay, so you've been a professional BMXer for a long, long time now. Has your mindset changed now? Because I know as you get a little bit older, you look at fear a little bit different. Obviously, you've got some freaks out there like Tony Hawk, and it doesn't seem to faze people like that. Do you find yourself a little bit more fearful or fearless now, or the opposite? What do you think?
So I think that fear has always been there, but I've learned to just be more conscious of fear. And the first tattoo I ever got is fear is just a thought. Thoughts can be changed. And it's my understanding of consciousness and being aware of everything and really assessing is fear is just an emotion. And it traces back to what we think. So if we can audit our thoughts, with a trick, kids come to me all the time. They're like, man, I'm afraid to try this. I'm like, well, what are you thinking about? Well, I'm thinking about what happens if I fall. I'm like, well, what happens if you land it? How does that feel? How does that look?
Yeah.
Things like that. So over the course of the years, I've just learned to really audit my thoughts and just assess fear and whether I want it to, paralyze me or help me grow.
Yeah. I guess getting some pretty good rewards along the way, such as traveling the world. And I believe in 2009, you won your first event and got the best trick. And amongst the prize winnings was like a brand new Harley Davidson as well. Yeah, that's not bad. So that helps you become a little bit more fearless.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was a huge day for me. Actually, the guy who got second place was someone I looked up to when I was a teenager, and so I'm friends with him now. And so that was an amazing experience. But yeah, there's lots of things. I mean, it's like you mentioned too. People look at the end result and they don't see the work that goes in, but it sounds cliche. Everyone's saying it today, but like, love the journey. Like, it's a process because you're never going to be at a destination because you're always going to want to get to the next level. Like, you don't play a video game and beat level 1 and give up. Like, you want to get to level 2. So it's like you just keep going and it keeps, building.
Yeah. So do you think, now, obviously back then you didn't really have your Instagrams and your Facebook pages. Do you think now, obviously it can help people because you can inspire people, but do you think it's a hindrance as well? Because with that comes instant gratification and they look at you perform these amazing tricks. I was watching some videos of you online. I was like, oh my God, it's insane. And you're wiping out as well, but you're getting straight back onto it. But do you think a lot of kids are looking at that and go, I want that, except I want to be a pro within 3 years as well because Josh did it, but it's just not feasible for them?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's just any area of life. People see, like you said, the end result. And social media is such a facade. Like, you just see what people allow you to see. And I try to be as transparent as I can and share everything. And I get messages all the time like, how do I do this and that? Like, it's like, just work on what you want to do, focus on the vision, and just like keep putting the work in. But yeah, I think it's an amazing tool. Like, you can connect with so many people, and by sharing, I've been able to help so many different walks of life just from different perspectives. And I think that's what it comes down to, is the individual's perspective. Like, I was brought up to work hard for the life I want. Anything's possible if you work. You put the work in, it's going to manifest. And that's what I try to share. But so many people hit me up. They're like, man, I want this and that. And I was like, well, what are you doing for it? Do you have a plan? Are you putting the work in? And so it just depends on the context and the perspective, I think. And it could be an amazing tool, or it can be a hindrance. And you see that a lot with people with self-doubt and self-esteem, but just like seeing what the other people are allowing them to see on social when it's not like the full truth.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know you're still young. You're definitely not anywhere near as long in the tooth as me. But have you seen a change in people since when you were racing as a professional, as a teenager, compared to today? Are people not willing to put in the work as much, or am I way off track there?
No, you're on point. I mean, there's two pieces that I see now that I didn't see back then, and that's like seeing everyone's success and like all the things that they want you to see on social. Like, people are like afraid of judgment. They're comparing themselves. They're not focusing on where they are now and where they started. Back then we just had YouTube came out in 2007 or 6. I think we put up our first video. A buddy of ours got a camera. We just want to document it. We just want to share what we were doing because we were having fun. But now it's like, oh, I don't know if I should post this because so-and-so already did that trick. And that's a huge thing. And it's like, why? Why do you care? Like, you're stoked on it. Just post it, share it, or don't. But don't do it just because, or not do it just because someone else did or didn't, or it's not as good in your mind. It is what it is. And if you're, doing better than yesterday, you should be stoked on that. I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen change over the last 10, 12 years.
Sure. And, when you're actually being filmed or you're documenting it as well, it gives you a sense of accountability to work harder. You don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to come up short. And, some people, can really capture the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. and they can create a magnitude of a loyal following just through that. If I'm not advising people do this, but if like I'm good friends with Pritchard from the TV show Dirty Sanchez. I don't know if you know Dirty Sanchez. That was in Europe. It's kind of like Jackass, but it was huge in Europe. And then you got the guys on Jackass as well. They weren't as notable as being professional skateboarders as they were as just guys just jacking around. But if they look back on their careers, I bet they are so thankful that people did film it and didn't shy away from that.
Of course.
Anyway, apart from the BMX, and this is a fantastic story in itself. But what is a very transparent story that you've put out there, and I totally respect you for putting it out there and helping people out there, is some news that you got, I believe, in 2010. Can you tell my viewers a little bit about that, what happened and how that came about?
Yeah, so back in 2009, I won my first pro contest, won the best trick, inventing a trick that I was the first to do, won the Harley, which is living the dream, and then got to ride X Games a couple months later. Like, that was it. I was
X
stoked.
Games as well. Wow, that's on top of the world right there.
I got the email from Matt Hoffman, and I was like, no way, is this serious? Like, this is awesome. And then the rest of the year was just amazing. First time leaving the country, going to multiple countries. And then Dave Mira had his invite-only contest at his private warehouse in December. And I got invited to that. And I got like 7th place, I think. And that's 16 of the top riders around the world. And I just was so stoked. Now, over that whole year, I've been having terrible headaches and migraines to the point where I'd start vomiting or losing my vision. And friends would have to drive me to the emergency room in urgent care. And they would always send me home with pain pills. And I would ask for a scan, like MRI, CAT scan, something. And they kept saying, no, you're young, you're healthy, just go home, take the pills. A lot of people have headaches. It's normal. Come back if you need more. And that's what I did every time. I didn't take them because I had a traumatic experience when I was younger. I had the flu, and I contributed throwing up to the aspirin that I took. But it was just, that was the cycle for that year. Now, March of 2010, the vision was fine. The headaches were kind of hit or miss each day. And this day was a good day. And I was trying a new trick, and I had been doing it in the foam pit. And for those that don't know, it's just a big box after a ramp full of foam, and we got it from the gymnastics, and we try tricks in there. Back then, we just had that or a real ramp. Today, we have a middleman, like a padded ramp to try tricks on. But I felt really good. I went and tried it on the real ramp, and I over-rotated the trick because I was, a little fearful of under-rotating. So ironically, over-rotated, fell, hit my head, got knocked out, had to get an MRI. Now, that was when the doctor walked in and told me, there's no swelling, there's no bleeding, so that's fine, but there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And that was the first of 3 brain tumor diagnoses I received. It was an accidental brain tumor diagnosis, and it ended up taking over, I think it was 8 or 9 centimeters long, 4 wide and 4 deep. And the MRI is gnarly looking, but that was an accidental brain tumor diagnosis because I hit my head. And if I hadn't hit my head, I'd be dead today.
Yeah, that fall basically saved your life. Maybe you wouldn't have been diagnosed.
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't have. And my surgeon at Duke University told me, another month or two, you wouldn't be here today. Wow. So it's pretty insane. He's like, you're lucky you fell and hit your head.
Okay, so just for my listeners to get an understanding here, what sort of tumor was this? Was this a benign tumor? Was this a cancerous tumor, or what was this?
Yeah, they said it was benign, and I don't know. They took it out, and then it came back 2 years later in 2 areas. So yeah, it's called a meningioma tumor. It grows from the meninges layer of your brain, and so like I said, I've been diagnosed 2 more times since. The second time we used Gamma Knife to basically zap them, and the 2 areas that grew back shrunk. Then the third time is when I actually took into the ketogenic diet, and that's when they told me that, hey, it's they think it requires biopsy to tell for sure, but they think it's called neurofibromatosis. So it's a benign meningioma tumor that's a genetic kink somewhere that keeps making them pop up. And what's crazy is, thankfully, I just have the 4 brain tumors today, because I could also have spinal cord tumors. And that would lead me to being in a lot of pain, probably not be able to ride or train. So it's an interesting perspective piece to say that statement. But it's just they say it's a benign meningioma tumor that's a genetic cause to them.
Wow. So you have 4 tumors right now that you're obviously controlling, and you briefly mentioned that you fell into the ketogenic diet to kind of help control this and control the further growth. How did you come across the ketogenic diet? Did somebody suggest that this could possibly help this particular issue?
So it was 2013. I was learning about like gluten-free and holistic health and all these things. And a friend of mine gave me a book called Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter.
Yeah,
and
great book, great book.
She didn't know anything about, high fat, low carb or ketogenic or anything. She just gave me the book because she thought, oh, gluten-free, you'd be interested in it. And that's the first time I learned about the ketogenic diet, and then just kept going the years after. And it wasn't until the third diagnosis that I actually started researching it more, got a glucometer to test my blood, and really implemented it 100%. And by doing so, a year later, there was no growth of any of the tumors. The two that were zapped from Gamma Knife they shrunk and were still stable. And then the two new ones on the opposite side, there was no progression. And actually, I just had my 2-year MRI a week ago before I went to see Ryan, and no progression. So I put 2 and 2 together. I've been learning about the anti-inflammatory effects of it, of course, but then the epigenetic effects. And they're telling me, hey, we think it's genetic. And I'm like, well, I learned that you can express genes one way or another. So let me give this 100% effort, and I did, and it's been working well.
Wow, that's amazing. And coincidentally, I had our mutual friend, which is how I got to know about you, Sean Wells. Tell me some similar stories that he had advised some people that had reached out to him as well that had a cancerous tumor. He actually texted me the images as well of a female client who had a tumor that was taking up pretty much the one side of the brain, and it had reduced in size by about 85% only six weeks later when she was supposed to be buried. So it's amazing. People do say, well, the ketogenic diet is a buzzword, it's another fad. I don't believe it is a fad. Of course, these things surface every now and again because of all the amazing anecdotes and reviews and research that we've seen of it being an anti-inflammatory dietary protocol, when people can have certain inflammatory responders to various carbohydrates or over excessive amounts of the food that is available in a post-industrialized nation today that has an inflammatory response that can turn into a chemical response or a trigger anywhere. So, what did you find when you followed the ketogenic diet, you started implementing it? Was it the ketogenic diet as we know it today being the healthiest, full, nutrient-dense foods? Because I find that a lot of people do get it confused somewhat with the Atkins diet, and they use it as justification to eat loads of fatty bacon and have vegetable oils and loads of butter, just pile everything on top. What is the form of ketogenic diet that you're actually following?
So thankfully I got introduced to one of the best, and Dr. Perlmutter, and there's so many foods I started implementing, things like cabbage, for example. I never thought I'd eat cabbage. It's actually really good, especially if you cook it right or if you prep it right in the salad, things like that. But for me, I try to get it in. Are you familiar with Art and Science of Low Carb Performance?
Yeah.
Dr. Jeff Bullock. So they talk about the varieties of fats and how fat cells in the body are accumulated, and how if you want to burn certain fats, you have to eat more than just one saturated fat, for example. You can't just dip butter or bacon and butter and mayo and call it a day. So I aim to eat a whole variety of fats and vegetables and protein sources. The list could go on, but I just try to get a good variety and use vegetables for the micronutrients, which are depleted today, but that's why I supplement. But really to get that fiber and that bulk and that prebiotic fiber. So like I said, Dr. Perlmutter was the first person I got introduced to in the space, and so I had a really good guidance. I hadn't even I may have heard of Atkins diet, but didn't really know what it was. And so thankfully I never went down that path of just going to McDonald's and taking the bun off the burger and the ketchup off or something like that, and just oh, I'm keto because this is a burger with cheese, bacon. So yeah, and that's what I advocate too for, anyone on my social that I share with or talk to, the clients I work with, anything like that. It's just a good variety of food, because you can't just live off one food and expect to get everything.
Yeah.
And, I think that's when problems occur as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just run through this. So yeah, I assume that obviously you're having a medium amount of protein, pretty much zero complex carbs. You're having mostly fibrous carbohydrates for your prebiotics and micronutrients. And then on top of that, you're going for your avocado, your egg yolks, your oily fish, steak, nuts, seeds, extra virgin olive oil.
Yep. Yeah. So like sardines, I bring them on the plane all the time, like wild plant sardines and olive oil, lemon
Wow,
juice.
I
Like
bet people
never.
don't want to be sat next to you on a plane.
I try to wait until they get their food, but it's an interesting thing. And I mean, an example of like lunch today, or I guess technically dinner. I'm doing like an earlier eating window, trying to like optimize sleep and see what happens. But today it was just a bed of mixed greens, some baked chicken thigh with a bunch of spices my girlfriend and I cooked this morning, diced up avocado. What else I did? I did some like I had like a beet, cabbage, sauerkraut mix, put that on there. I did some pickled okra and then some avocado oil based ranch dressing and then some olive oil and I think like a handful of pecans. And that I do 2 meals a day, so I was like, that was perfect meal right there.
So you're intermittent fasting with that.
Yeah, that works out really well. My girlfriend and I responded to that really well. I used to get nauseous trying to eat breakfast in the morning. So switching to a high fat, low carb diet like really helped with that. And so I started like eating more breakfast and then I moved to like protein fat smoothies. And that seemed to be more feasible for me to drink a meal over time than like eating solid food. And then when I started learning about fasting and I was like, man, like, all right, like I wasn't even drinking coffee back then. Now I'll put a little bit of fat in my coffee or just not have any coffee, just electrolytes or something. But yeah, like the intermittent fasting just worked really well because I feel better training. I train first thing in the morning with my girlfriend, part of our routine. And I just feel lighter and just more, I don't know, like I just feel better and then go home, shower, make some food later on. You know, it just works well. And then my schedule wise, as you probably know, like being busy, like trying to, like I was coming from 6 meals a day because I'm an athlete and I got to eat all these meals. Like that's a lot of cooking. That's a lot of dishes. I hate doing dishes. So it works out so well on so many levels.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who loves doing dishes, so I'm sure a lot of people are
My
going to be
roommate
following
does.
you. Oh, really? That's perfect. What a great roommate.
It works out well.
Yeah, so I actually followed intermittent fasting last year for about 8 months. My friend Nick Holt, who's been following it for several years now, got abs all year round, great shape. He introduced me to it, and up until then, I hadn't missed a meal in like 18 years, you know, the typical bodybuilder style. And then last year, I really wanted to lose muscle. You know, I was participating in a few more endurance events like Ironman, ultramarathon and stuff. And I followed a cyclical ketogenic diet along with intermittent fasting. I found those two work very, very well together because I'd get into ketosis very quick. I'd knock myself out of ketosis before bed by having some carbohydrates or some berries, some fruits. But it really worked well to put me back into ketosis. And I feel the same way. First thing in the morning, you know, obviously being lighter in weight anyway, by following that, I felt like I was a teenager again. You know, I felt really light. I could go for a run and feel absolutely awesome. And the other attribute that I did feel in the morning is that it didn't take me as long to wake up. Sometimes I could drag ass for a while until I've had my coffee or whatever, but I felt very alert mentally. I felt I had that much more clarity. Do you find, being a professional athlete yourself, that when you're training, when you're competing, that you have any change in mental clarity? Of course, you know, if the headaches have gone, that's going to help. Do you feel a change, a shift from going from your normal 5 or 6 to your ketogenic diet as being a help to your sport?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I don't feel like I used to ride like a normal session, like anywhere from 2 to 4 hours and just be hungry. But like now I'll do a fasted riding session and I'll feel fine, you know. I took the time to adapt properly, which I tried the first time in mid-contest season, which was terrible because I felt like garbage. I didn't understand this whole adaptation phase that could occur, and I didn't know what to do about it. So,
did you go through the keto flu as well?
It wasn't so much that. It was just like I felt tired all the time and like weak, and I wasn't doing as well in the gym. And I ended up, you know, long story short, adding back sweet potatoes and things like that. Just, you know, but then after I learned about adaptation and electrolytes and, you know, just doing things a little bit more appropriately to avoid keto flu and things like that, I adapted really well. And I find now I can ride just as long without needing a meal or a snack in between, and I'm done, and I'm like, all right, I could, you know, wait a little longer to eat. And I think also too, I used to crash midday, and I was drinking so much soda and just like tons of processed food at the beginning of this journey. So obviously cutting out those things, just energy levels are just, you know, more stable. And then of course, you know, you think clearer and you can react differently. And, you know, so that's been some of like my biggest benefits that I've noticed as far as, you know, adapting to high fat and my training sessions.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, one thing I've noticed as well, and I'm glad that you brought up your tattoos earlier. I was going to bring them up, but it's so much better when you bring them up as well. I got a couple of my own. I've got one here saying "Built to Endure," what the world throws at me, and I have "Face Fear" on my knuckles
That's
as
awesome.
well. And it does act as a reminder, as accountability, because we're always faced with doubt, excuses, weaknesses. They're always thrown at us, and it's very easy for us to get influenced. And one thing that I found that was very admiring about yourself, that I really respect, and maybe it wasn't always that way, is that you've never played the victim card. It's not like pity me. You're actually going out there stronger than ever, really influencing others, being a role model, and still pushing your sport to the absolute pinnacle of you can be within the world. Has that always been the case, or was there a transition? And if there was, what was it?
So no, it was never the case. It's never been like that forever. It was a couple of different things. Obviously, the first brain tumor diagnosis, I went straight into what I call victimville. Just why me? What did I do to deserve this? Am I a bad person? My dreams would be taken away from me. What did I do? The second diagnosis, a little bit of that, but more of like, all right, I did this once, I can do it again. What am I trying to accomplish? I want to, my vision is to ride BMX. And then the third diagnosis, it was nothing, like victim mentality. It was just, how do I use this to help me and help other people? How do I, progress my life? Now, I think one of the most profound events that took place that changed that perspective was, of course, the first diagnosis and the surgery and understanding that I may die either way. But then there was, my mom's story of battling colon cancer with a smile on her face every step of the way, and actually hiding it from me the first year I moved out of home to pursue BMX because she wanted me to succeed, which only a mom can do that. That's insane. Two other things, Lance Armstrong's story. At the time, I was like, man, this guy went through so much worse than I'm going through right now, like brain, lung, and testicular cancer. And he got back on the bike. A little bit different of a bike, but he got back on a bike. And so that gave me a lot of motivation. And then the third part was the BMX community worldwide, whether they had met me or heard about me. Once they heard my story, they reached out to share their love and support. And that gave me such encouragement that I just started shifting fear to fuel. And then every step of the way, years on after, just became a part of me. And it's my biggest belief is our reality is a manifestation of our choices. And that choice is perspective, as well as many other things. And so, have you ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Joe Dispenza, did you say?
Yep.
No, I haven't.
Yep. So I went through one of his online courses like 3 years ago, and he's all about subconscious versus the conscious, auto-suggestion and auto-programming, like subconscious programming, all these things with the brain. And it really taught me our thoughts trigger emotions, which lead us to taking action, which manifests a reality. And so when you can really audit, what you got going on inside, they say our biggest challenge is ourself, our mind. And so this whole journey has just led me to, learning how to better improve myself and my life and share it with others. And that's why, I share everything I can with people, is because, I don't want people to go through what I went through to learn,
Interesting. And I guess what people can take away from it, what I just took away, is that it can be normal for you to get thrown on your ass and take the pity card to begin with. Because here you are, within 3 years, you've gone professional. Then you've been invited to the X Games, you've won pro events, and you've been to the invitationals as well, all within a very short time. And then this happens when you're right at the top, and was continue to grow. So I guess it's to be expected. If you're not expecting something like that, it's the element of surprise that's going to hit you. But I guess the more aware that you can be of the circumstance and change your perception, it's not going to be easy, but we are a creature, we are an element of habits. So you just have to change that habit to a certain degree. And the more that you can think along those lines, and again, use such as, these podcasts or social networks as a form of transparency, it's going to give you that accountability to think that way as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I believe everything is perspective. It starts with perspective, because you can see life one way and the other person that lives the same life can see a life the other way. And it's funny because it takes just as much energy to think one way or the other, but I argue that it takes more energy in the long run to go down the victim path, because then you got to dig yourself further out of the hole that you just dug. So it may not be the best at the beginning, you may not have that satisfaction you want, but if you keep pushing and working, my life is an example of it. You're going to come out better out on the other end. So it's just, I don't know. And there's a favorite quote that Jim Carrey actually gave in a speech one time, and he said, "Life doesn't happen to you; it happens for you." But it's a choice to see it that way. You know, glass half full versus empty. Like it's just a perspective. What you take out of it is what you're going to get. And law of attraction, quantum physics, whatever you want, you know, tells us that that's what you're going to find more of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I like that. I like that quote. So what else do you do to control your environment? Obviously, you know, you're training, you're following a ketogenic lifestyle. Are you doing anything else to help control the environment that we're in today? Like, do you have like EMF blocking clothes? Do you switch your phone off or on airplane mode? Do you use an infrared sauna? You know, what are the other hacks that you are applying to your life, if any, to help you?
Yeah, so I mean, all the biohacks, you know, I'm learning more and I'm implementing more, especially hanging out with, you know, Dr. Ryan Lowry and Sean Wells, like and like Dave Asprey, you know, like the wealth of knowledge that those guys have of all these biohacking tools. I'm trying to implement them, you know, as much as I can, one at a time as I learn. But I think one of the most profound, like I think two of the most profound things that I've seen benefit me in my life and my journey and my purpose is number one, reaching out for support. Like I mentioned, virtual mentors, you know, Kerwin Ray is another great guy with a mindset, and I've, you know, been able to connect with him and become friends. Same with Ryan and Sean and, you know, yourself now, like connecting with all these like-minded individuals that are trying to help themselves and help other people. It allows you to not feel alone or feel like you're crazy trying to do something maybe different or out of the norm to your friends and family. And that's why I try to make myself so available on social media, is because, you know, kids hit me up all the time. They're like, man, I'm feeling this way or that way. And I'm like, well, let's talk about it. Let's make a plan. Like, what do you want? What do you don't want? Things like that. And then number two is that having a plan, you know, and I love having a morning routine and just like having the time to myself. Well, it's dark out, no one's awake, and I get my thoughts organized, do a little meditation, some breathing, gratitude journaling, but having a detailed plan of tactical action items that you can apply to any goal, whether it's business, it's spirituality, it's, you know, a hobby, whatever, having that plan and steps you can take and like check off. I think that's brought a lot of success in all areas of my life, the last couple of years of implementing that. And I like sharing that because it's, you know, it's just something that you can set in place and you can audit, you know. And I have actually on my whiteboard, it's 2 lines and it's like a funnel. And I have my goals, whatever it is, and I'll circle in as much as, you know, I'm seeing. And that will motivate me. I'm like, all right, man, like if my goal is financial for, you know, for that example, and I'm like $2,000 away from my goal. And it's like, well, what would it take to reach that $2,000? I've already done this. What else would I got to do? And I think just having all these things, these systems set in place are really helpful.
Right, yeah. So do you try anything like IV therapy and taking high levels of glutathione or vitamin C or anything like that? Do you do that?
I was actually just talking to Ryan today, and I was like, man, next time I'm in Tampa, her name's Dr. Lisa Koch, I believe is how you pronounce it. She's right in Tampa, and he just had her on his podcast. And actually, I spoke with her at the event in Tampa along with Ryan, and they were talking about IV glutathione and like other, you know, supplements and things like that, and then the infrared saunas for detoxing and the light therapies for different chakras. And I was like, man, like I want to go there. And they do something called a C-axis adjustment with the chiropractic care to align your brainstem and all your chakras and everything. And I was like, all right, that's next. And also, I'm going into Amen Clinics to see Dr. Daniel Amen's team to get a spec image with Ryan to compare scans without exogenous ketones, and then go back a second trip with exogenous ketones to see what kind of blood flow and activity, because he also has a past of TBIs just like I do. And then, of course, I have like the tumors and all that. But really to see what's going on in the brain, so that way we can make a plan of all these different biohacking tools and see what we can do to, you know, help heal ourselves and then share it with other.
Have you heard of much, or did Ryan or anybody mention about pulse electronic magnetic field therapy as well, PEMF? How that could possibly help?
Not so much. I've heard of that, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it'll be worth speaking to those guys while you're over there. I spent some time in the university at Tampa there. I was actually in Oldsmar for 6 weeks, which is about 10 miles away from there.
They have a BMX track there.
Oh, really?
My girlfriend's an athletic trainer. She worked there for a summer with a team out there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there's a doctor out there who has a clinic called Dr. Sponaugle I could put that in the show notes. And I spent 6 weeks there. And the guy is phenomenal. If you think in my industry, before and after pictures is someone fat and then they're thin. His before and afters when I was there was somebody's going in a wheelchair and they're walking out.
That's
amazing. People are dealing with various mental disorders or Lyme's disease or anything like that. I went there because I was only sleeping 3 hours a night, and this was my last resort. I tried everything else. And the things that they do there, obviously, was IV therapy, colonic hydrotherapy, following a vegan-style diet for the duration that I was there. And then, obviously, a lot of home care. And part of that home care could be pulse electronic magnetic field therapy. I do have an infrared sauna here. I do whatever I can to, control all those EMFs whenever possible. And now I do quantify my sleep with the Oura Ring, and my sleep is so much better now. But, if your electrons aren't, if you're not charged, if your cells aren't charged, it's going to be very hard to recover. And that's what I've noticed, and I've been told with the PEMF. I'm not an expert in it by any means, but it has prompted me to purchase my own device and utilize it on a regular basis. My local doctor here, Dr. Jason Watson, actually uses one every single day. And when I see his sleep data, it makes me sick. And he has his telomeres tested as well. And I think his biological age is about 12 or 13 years younger than his chronological age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So it's definitely worth looking into. There's a lot of hacks out there, but obviously, you have to go for that low-hanging fruit first, which sounds like what you're doing with optimizing your sleep, your hydration, your ketogenic lifestyle, your routine, and keeping it very clean. And I think, what we could all agree on, whether it's a keto diet or whether it's an Atkins diet or carnivore diet, is that we should just eat as natural as we possibly can, as opposed to going for that quote-unquote health food that has like 57 ingredients on the back.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I know you and Sean talked a lot about this, and Dr. Lisa and Ryan talked about it as well, but like virtually every issue that we deal with that's negative comes back from mitochondria dysfunction. And the cellular energy comes from them, not performing as well. So anything you can do to enhance them, you're going to have a better quality of life and health. And that's, like I said, like I'm so grateful to be connected with all these people that have so much knowledge, because now I'm like, all right, that, infrared sauna, is on the list next, spec image, the IVs and like all these things, and red light therapy, like all these things. So it's, it's just, I think once you, instead of making it overcomplicated, like you said, just eat real food. Don't eat things that are, have a list of ingredients that you don't even know how to say many of them, and then after that, just educate yourself. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I always say, if you can't pronounce the ingredient, how is your body going to recognize it?
Yeah, right. For sure.
So in 2015, this has obviously turned into a huge passion for you, because you actually went and got your qualifications within this field as well. What were your qualifications, and what have you done, or what do you plan to do with these in the future?
Yeah, so 2014, I started the journey through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and it was my kind of fear-based motive to figure out how to learn these different things and how to apply it to sharing it with other people. And the first week I got pissed off, because they're like, we're not here to teach you what to think, we're here to teach you how to think. So I went from everything from high carb to vegan to low carb to this and that. And I was just like, man. But then I thankfully I had Dr. Perlmutter's work, in the background, and just kind of navigated through the paths, and then got connected with Dr. Mark Hyman and Mark Sisson in the program. They were guest speakers, and just advocating for the same thing, like real food, whole food, high fat, low carb, minimally processed, if you can, zero processed foods, and you'll be good. And then, I got my certification as a certified holistic health coach. And since then, I've just continued to educate myself with books, podcasts like yourself, connecting with people, and just seeing what I can do to learn, and then just sharing it with people. And it wasn't until 2018 I actually, started coaching people officially, and made a business for myself out of helping people. And it was just a few things that happened, but I decided on that third diagnosis in 2017, I want to stop competing, because it wasn't really helping my purpose to help other people. And I've been doing it over a decade, and our sport's really small, so there's no media coverage, so people don't know if I ride or not, or like compete or not, or if I win or lose. And I was like, man, how can I really help people? And so, I'm taking a step away from one avenue of paying my bills, and I was like, man, let's start one-on-one, just coaching people, and then let's see what we can do from there. And now I'm speaking now, I'm working on a book, and have a coaching program. I have an online coaching program I'm about to roll out to do more group coaching to affect more people, and just everything I want to do or I'm doing right now is to be online with my purpose to help people. And just that course was like the start of like, how do I help people? And obviously they train you to coach people and, all that processes. And it's just, it's been an amazing journey. And now I'm making a living more so than I was riding, helping people. And there's nothing that beats that.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. Let me ask you, is there a career in helping people in BMX and, people who want to aspire to, become a top amateur or a pro even? Is that a job?
Yeah, so BMX is that's what I want to get to doing, and I'm actually working with a kid right now. His name is Jaka. He's from Slovenia. He just turned 14. His father had been following me on Instagram for a while, and he knew about me from BMX, but then he got to know me about my personality and what I shared, and everything that goes into what I think is living healthy, the mind and body. And so last February, he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey man, love what you're doing. Would you be able to help out my son and be his coach, like his official BMX coach?" And so I've been coaching him on Skype for a couple months. And then last July, him and his father came to stay with me for a month to train with me. And then I went over there to Slovenia a couple of weeks ago, and we're getting ready to go around for the contests around the world this year for him to compete. And I got his father, changing the whole family, changing their eating habits, and coaching his son with BMX. But of course, I bring in the mindset and the visualization piece, and then the healthy eating. And he works with a coach at the gym out there, and it's just amazing. So that's something I want to do more of. It's just a matter of getting the riders' perspectives to be like, no, I'm good, or man, I can't afford that, it's not worth it, things like that. So one at a time, they're starting to ask more questions, and hey man, what do I do about this? So it's the resistance is kind of coming down. But yeah, working with Yaka is like a dream come true, to be able to pass on everything I've learned to another hungry BMX rider at that age, and he's so good already. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
That's awesome. I guess to a certain degree, that would keep you on your toes with your BMXing as well, that you'd have to go out there and ride and practice to make sure that you can teach these kids the same.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not competing anymore, but I can still ride at the same level, I love it. And, I'm fairly young, I just turned 30, but I mean, man, Mira was still riding until his early 40s. I mean, there's still guys that are in their 50s riding. So it's just a matter of how you take care of your body. And I think I'm taking care of my body a lot better than the old school dudes were. And so, yeah, I love riding and be able to help him out more, because I can relate to the tricks he's trying to learn. Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, it works like this. This is how I do it. You should try it. So for sure.
Have you heard of Sean Palmer?
The name sounds familiar.
Sean Palmer, if you don't look him up, he is by far my favorite all-time athlete. The guy is so multifaceted. He's very extreme. I actually interviewed him when I was at bodybuilding.com some years ago at it was the snowboard cross world championships. Sean had been away from the sport for quite a few years, and he had won various sporting world championships, whether it be like downhill slalom skiing. He came second place in the downhill mountain bike world championships. Oh, wow. They said if he had been wearing the Lycra that all the other riders would have worn, instead of his big old motocross gear, baggy pants and stuff, he would have won, because it was that close. It was like a tenth of a second that he came second place in. He rode Supercross, and then he had been away from the sport for a while. And there's a great documentary out there. I think it's called the Grumpy Champion or something like that. And he got into a lot of drugs and partying. He was winning all these titles based off his talent. But then as he was getting older, he got away from the drugs. He just went into hiding for a little while and cleaned himself up and got himself a personal trainer, eating right, supplementing. And then he came back in his 40s at the Snowboard World Cross Championships. And the sport had obviously evolved a lot. And he came back and he won the World Championship. Just won.
That's amazing.
It was unbelievable. And I was there when he won. And I thought that was fantastic. And it was a message that everyone could take home. Yeah, you can really prolong your career very much so if you prolong the habits, making sure that you're, making the habits that are healing your future and not harming it. So, who says you may make a comeback when you're in your 40s as well?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if the time's right.
Yeah, I'll put a link as well to Sean Palmer, because people should definitely check out that website, and I'll put some links over for you as well, Josh. So where can people find you? Should people want to interact with you? Should people want to hire you for your services or whatever? Where's the best places for them to find you?
So my website's just joshperrybmx.com, and then any social media I have, I'm most active on Instagram, but Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube is just Josh Perry BMX. Just keep it simple across the board. But like I said, I'm most interactive on Instagram, so I try to do my best to get back to all the DMs as soon as I can, and I'm always commenting back to people. I just love interacting with people and just seeing what I can share and the stories that people share with me as well. So. Yeah, I'm never, don't be shy, say what's up.
Yeah, and you have a daily blog, correct?
It's not daily anymore, but it's my daily, it's dailybrainstorms.com. And it kind of came from the thought process that went into it, of just like daily thoughts that we always have. It's like 50 to 70,000 thoughts on any given day. So I just named it dailybrainstorms.com. But I'm pretty active on it. It's not daily. So despite the title, I don't want to mislead people.
Got it. It's every now and again blog.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much for joining me, Josh. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for what you're doing for the sport and people. Obviously, that you can reach out and help. I'm sure you're going to reach out to so many more people as you continue to put out your book and increase your coaching business and interact with so many other people in the space. You mentioned Mark Hyman and Mark Sisson earlier. That's great company to be in. So it'll be awesome to see much more from you in the future, Josh.
Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on and the ability to share, and appreciate the connection. I'm stoked that Sean connected us.
Yeah, he's a good guy. All right. Well, thank you very much, Josh. I really appreciate it. And that is another episode of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. If you do like this episode, and if you do like any of them, please help us keep the lights on by subscribing and sharing. And please do leave any unbiased comments, and I will get back to you. Thank you very much. We are out.